My name is Fogha, Fogha MC Cornilius Refem. I am, I am not a historian or a sociologist or any of these things. These are the tools that I use to try to understand the world. And this is my first time in Suza, working with the Cartography project. First of all, I'll start with what my personal experience of the project has been, and then I tell you a bit more about what I find the challenge of the project to be. I think that personally coming to Suza already, when I told my brother that I was going to come to Suza, he asked me, so I can imagine you when you're done with the project going back to a university in Germany and then telling people about, these are how the people in Suza live, and I told him, but why can't you imagine me telling people in Suza something about people in Germany or anywhere else in the world? And he was in this idea where the people of Suza and anywhere else in Cameroon actually had something to say, but not to themselves. They were knowledge producers, but not really by themselves or not for themselves. There was someone else somewhere that wanted that knowledge for reasons I can't understand. And I tried to explain to him in general what my discomfort with that kind of research was. And coming here, I found it was precisely different. It's a project that is made for and with the community of Suza, and so what I've found to be the challenge of this project precisely is what also makes its strength. How do you create an economy of well-being with a community that has for so long been thought of as raw material, essentially as things that are to be studied for the purposes of improving something, someone, and somewhere else? I think that is the real challenge of this project, to deal with that weight. It's also something that is being taken on head on and quite in an exciting way, and I think that for me is something that motivates me personally to want to do more of this project, to work with a community of people that are quite open and share their stories for themselves, and so I think what has been personally marking for me has been the fact that knowing and having that conversation with my brother also helped to give me a framework of how I would deal with things in Suza. One would think that you would want to come here and try to find problems, especially when you think about well-being. It's easy to want to I understand and identify what's the problem and what solution can we propose. And I find that for me, it was always already about taking a step back and asking, what does well-being mean for the people in Suza? And what are the spaces for them where they negotiate and find that well-being? And so the work of the project is not necessarily to invent something new in Suza, but to try to amplify those areas that exist that already assure the well-being of people in Suza. And when we did the work of just asking people simply to trace, a very simple exercise, but to trace how they move from their house to their place of work, or how they move from their house to their places of leisure, the simple maps that they drew and the points of reference that they gave. Someone says, if you come from the church and you take a right on the road that goes to the pharmacy, you don't go to the pharmacy, but you take another left on this road. And just those simple explanations can already make you understand how people navigate space, where cartography is not something that you construct from the top, not even from the bottom. It's something that you really have to live. And I think that also is, for me, doing research well is precisely being in those contexts with people. I mean, if I were to give you the different maps that people had drawn of Suza and you looked at them, you would really not know what they were talking about. They have to some extent, explain what that means to you. And I think that it's research that invites exchange in that regard. And so my work, how I situate my work right now in the project is figuring out the subjective mapping, or creating a sort of subjective cartography of Suza, but also thinking quite precisely in the interest of not pathologizing, to think precisely what it means when people in Suza measure distance by money or by time. And when you ask someone in Suza, how far is it from your house to the church? And someone says, oh, it's 300 francs. It's quite easy to think, oh, this person is probably uneducated and they don't know how to measure the distance in kilometers, so they say it's 300 francs because they don't know kilometers. Now, what I've learned throughout this process is precisely to understand people's worlds and people's statements in the context they live in. And what that means is that 300 francs in Suza is not simply currency, but it is, in the tout monde, if one could say that, a measure of distance. Inflation in Suza, as in most parts in Cameroon, happens not with huge major economic booms and busts, but in the middle of the night, for example, if you move to the church from your house and you pay 300 francs, and in the night you want to come back on a bike, you're going to pay maybe 400 francs, right? Because at night they spend more time and more battery. So when one starts to shift the perspective, and perhaps this research might not end up creating a good economy for Suza, but it might, to some extent, in the interest of doing good research, create good practices of research and completely challenge the way we look at communities and not pathologize them, I think. But that's what I think.